Dude, you're already laughing. This is old school Texan rock.
It is.
The show just starts mid laugh.
Mid-laugh.
Eric's already going.
Already.
Texan rockers, we're gonna roll through the thing behind the thing for the first poetry video we made about antiquity called Ishtar.
Yes.
You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So Ishtar.
Boom, boom. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, you've already got the drum beat going. Maybe that's where we start.
No.
So at 2 points in this poem, Eric takes the whole rhythm away and just has this march beat, like boom, boom, boom. Is it just a bass pedal?
Yep. Just the bass drum.
And what's behind that is that the thing behind the thing is this is a poem about the ancient Israelites being marched towards Babylon after Nebuchadnezzar sacked their cities. And it's about coming up on the famous Ishtar gate, okay?
Yep. And in fact, that's how you started. How does it start?
Yeah, it starts with after days of being driven in the desert sun like livestock, but with cruelty. And the idea is you drive livestock for its preservation. You want your camel to be okay or your cattle to be okay. You drive war captives with the motivation that they realize they've been conquered and that they're mentally defeated by the time you get them where you want them to be.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, that's the
Yep.
And the double what is that called?
The like double meaning.
Yeah.
And the metaphor.
Thanks, Mark.
No, you're good. That's a great place to start too, because nothing broke people more mentally at the time when Babylon was in power than being marched to the city of Babylon after being conquered and coming up on the Ishtar gate. What would happen is you would march clear across the Arabian desert with not enough food and water, be feeling awful, and then you would come up on, probably the first thing you would see is the shine off of the gold of the gate, like lit up the front of the city like a beacon. Yeah. And it stood out against the mud brick. I mean, ancient Near Eastern cities are almost all the color of the clay, except for stuff that's been painted for a reason. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And the first thing you'd see out in front was probably the shine of the gold that you were entering the empire. And if you lived in Egypt or Canaan or Greece, or like if you lived on the ancient world map, you knew about the Ishtar Gate. It was famous, and you knew you did not want to see it unless you were traveling for trade. Yeah. If you were traveling because you were conquered, it meant like life was over as you knew it, and it was time to get used to being a Babylonian, right? Yeah. And so the gate itself was dedicated to Ishtar, the goddess of war and fertility and sex and violence, and that some kind of list like that is in the middle of the poem. Folks, we came back because Eric made a comment about an ex-girlfriend, and since we're in video now, it's just going to look choppier. Oh, my word.
Oh, gosh. I am.
Remember the time Eric compared an ex-girlfriend to Ishtar? I'm not editing it.
Oh, come on.
You didn't say which one.
I didn't say which one.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so back to the gate. Say you see the shimmering far off, and it's not a beacon of hope, it's a signal of death. And as you get closer, you start to see the green and blue backdrop with golden mythological creatures carved into Ishtar's gate. Things like dragons, like the story in the Garden of Eden. You have a dragon that sneaks in and gives the truth, but not quite the whole truth, and he loses its legs as punishment and becomes a snake, right? Yeah, right. The imagery, that metaphor is taken right off of the Ishtar Gate, I think. Yeah, right. You have dragons, you have lions. The lions of Ishtar were like, Ishtar would ride on a lion's back with a foot on each lion and like ride around, right? Like Skeletor had a tiger. Yeah, right. Except she had like multiple lions and she would just stand on them. Isn't that cool? Yeah. So you pull up on this and you start to see the mythology, the dragons, the winged like griffins, the strong like bulls, and you realize that you either were going to have to blend into this city and this culture somehow, or the line I wrote is amalgamate or seal your fate as a suffering servant. And that last bit is really important. I pulled that image from the prophet Isaiah, who described, people have argued lots of times that the suffering servant is Jesus. Maybe there's just as good an argument to be made that the suffering servant is Israel, and that they suffered before the nations to actually show them a very different kind of divinity.
Right.
And that's the idea, is blend into Babylon or you're going to pay. And ultimately a lot of people paid for being different. And there's stories in the Bible about that, right? You know, think of like Daniel refusing to bow down to the statue of Nebuchadnezzar, right? Who conquered Israel, or being thrown in the lion's den because he refused to pray to the king but prayed to Yahweh instead. You have these stories of not amalgamating and paying for it, right? And so you seal your fate as a suffering servant. Then the poem makes a clean break. The imagery of being marched towards Babylon as an ancient because you've been conquered flips to what I would argue is the modern empire of capitalism and marketing that robs you of your imagination and your way of being a people, that you know intuitively a better world is possible and we could have it anytime we're ready. But instead, we're buying shit we don't need to impress people we don't necessarily like all the time, right?
Yes.
And I think it was Tyler Durden that said, "You're not your khakis." And so it flips and it says, after days of being driven in the desert sun, the same line repeats, like a way to make $1 but with cruelty, billboard, web funnel, attention traded for soul. You drive through Chicago and see the billboards, or you try to surf the web, and every page you go to is trying to sell you an image or a product that would give you an image or an idol of yourself. Right? And so that's the flip, right? And then there's 2 stanzas about what Ishtar, the goddess, actually does, right? She lures you in with something sexy and then devours you whole, right? Iconography of her, it's like holding the skulls of men and dripping with blood, and like she's super violent. And the idea is you thought you were going to a lover's bed, but you got eaten alive. Just like when you buy a bunch of products, you think it will ultimately give you satisfaction, but you end up feeling bankrupt and naked and ashamed, all of those biblical words, right? Or ripped off. And that's kind of like...
Is that any part of buyer's remorse or not?
Yeah, totally is buyer's remorse. We live in a like perpetual state of buyer's remorse as a world. And so remember the line, amalgamate or seal your fate as a suffering servant? We flip that line. This whole thing, the back half plays off the first half. Kind of like the Bible. And it says, assimilate or feel the full weight of the empire's ability to bleed you out without pity. And I think that's what marketing does. It bleeds you out of your cash, but more than that, it bleeds you out of your identity. In the Bible, Israel has a unique calling from God to sit at the crossroads of civilization and be a different kind of people with a different kind of divinity. And going to Babylon, the question is, are we just going to fit in and be like the empire? Or are we in some way going to be the unique set apart people of God amidst that empire? And I think that's the human question. Like, it's not just a Jewish or Christian question that we all have now. Can we be true to the humanity we know is right and just, and that actually bridles our strength and our ability to buy things for the sake of others and for the sake of a better world?
Exactly.
And when you don't do that, when you just buy the marketing lies, it bleeds you out. And you're trading the ability to represent in my mind, a living divinity and image the virtue of God correctly, to be like a stupid 2-foot tall house idol that bought an image or a car or square footage of a house to try to say something about yourself.
Right.
Except it's not important what you're saying, not anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the last two stanzas, the first one talks about what's actually happening to our world. Like, we're actually bleeding ourselves dry of resources. I, as a dad, don't know what will be left for my 2-year-old baby girl in 50 years.
Right.
I don't.
Right.
And what about her kids? Right?
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, until cities stop flooding and rivers stop being polluted and forests stop like disappearing, economic theories are not working.
Right.
Economic theories could work, but greed and marketing tips the scales to where we're depleting our identity and our resources.
Right. Yeah.
And so it uses this mythological imagery to talk about, that our generation thinks the flood is a myth, which means like these Bible stories are just old stories that don't mean anything anymore. And it's like, no, it's about humanity becoming so blind and wicked so that it was so everyday that there was a catastrophe.
Right.
Like what's more relevant than that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it gets real practical, and it says it's down to like the everyday life level of it's the Amazon orders you don't even remember placing. And I'm guilty of that too. Like, boxes will show up to my house and I'll be like, oh, I forgot that I clicked on that.
Exactly.
Because marketing works that well.
Yeah.
And well enough that how many of you have like seen an ad online and thought, oh, but I bet I could get it cheaper on Amazon. And so you click the button, right?
Exactly.
And it's like you move that quickly from should I make the purchase to, well, how easy is it to make the purchase?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But the goal of an empire of power is that its citizens can never imagine a different way of life. Yeah.
That's right. In fact, didn't you turn me on to a movie that the guy was saying that they were having to fight the people in order to steer them a certain way, and the guy's like, don't worry, once their kids grow up, we won't have to fight them anymore because they won't know any better because they would have grown up this way.
They'll simply be enculturated.
Right.
They'll simply have the same ideology that we do because they're in our larger culture.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the last stanza, I love the imagery of ancient warriors for actually doing something that matters. And I don't mean like trying to go to battle. I mean like having a mission, using teamwork, and accomplishing great things as a human race. And I say it's no longer about a warrior's code. You claim your kleos in an entirely different mode. Kleos is the glory that a Greek warrior would win in battle.
Yeah.
And I say we try to basically claim real gravity and real like kavod or divine glory by the brands on our shirt or the kind of car we're driving. And yeah, the last line is, it's so subtle and so we carry on, but it's a whole lot harder to leave Babylon. And that's the fundamental, like, to me, when our poems are at their best, they actually set up a question that won't go away.
Yeah.
And the question of this poem is, how do I leave Babylon?
Yeah.
How am I every day acting blindly as a citizen of the empire?
Yeah, right.
And what does it look like to leave, to go home, to go back to a promised land, to go back to carrying the image of divinity with authenticity, go back to, saying if COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter and all of the like tumultuous things that have happened in the last 5 years have taught us nothing, they should have taught us that it no longer matters what you drive or what the person across from you at the table is wearing, but their essence is their true value, and what matters is their heart and their mind and their internal fortitude to make the world better,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So how do you leave and more every day be a citizen of God's world, not the empire's world?
So dig on the content of someone's character.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Did that fit?
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
We're all about archaeology here.
All right. There we go.
Dig up the past for a better tomorrow, bro.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and so here's our first ever Texan Rock audio and video poem, Ishtar.
Be good to each other.
Bye, everyone. All right, bro.
All right. Hi, everybody.
After days of being driven in the desert sun like livestock, but with cruelty, hook and nose, whip to back, no falling back, we arrive at our fabled destination. And I think no thoughts of my own. I can't, because the gate is designed to make up my mind. She is blue like the sea and squirming with monsters. She belongs to Ishtar, trampler of lions, the warrior goddess who does take prisoners. Lots of them, lots of us, and our lot has been cast to enter her house, her city, her keep, her womb, and be reborn in her image. It looms tall and stands out from the mud brick city as a warning of hallowed, deathly hollows to those who will not kiss her signet ring, see the dragon, the lion, the bull, and sense fertility, love, sex, war, frenzy, amalgamate, or seal your fate as a suffering servant. After days of being driven in the desert sun like a way to make $1, but with cruelty, billboard, web funnel, attention traded for soul, we arrive at our ancient lamentation. And I think no thoughts of my own. I can't, because the gate is burned in my mind across time. I've seen her before, step down from her lion's back and swallow a culture whole for a snack while blood drips down her supermodel chin. She stares you dead in the soul and grins at a people who long ago lost the word sin and crafted gods of ourselves and cannot begin to understand the danger of her city. Ishtar whispers her bed is not far from the crowds, and when she takes you there, she devours, eats you alive, and left with glazed dead eyes, breathing, but some other thing lives inside of your skin, and you are looking for the next product or purchase, assimilate, or feel the full weight of the empire's ability to bleed you out without pity. And worse, this generation thinks the flood is a myth and Ishtar's gate is full of corporation and brands or Amazon orders you don't remember placing, all while tsunami bombs fall on stretches of beach that would be picturesque save for our great human overreach, and we are still haunted by ancient waters. Because it's no longer about a warrior's code. You claim your Kleos in an entirely different mode. It's the brand on your fleece. It's the new lease. Barely afforded it, so that at Friday night lights, you're in that car in plain sight. See, it's so subtle, and we carry on. But it's a whole lot harder to leave Babylon.
That's it.
Oh, I was gonna and then the video could come out of my hands. I don't know. No.
That's hilarious. I'm not that good of an editor.
Not that good. You stole the word.
Ooh,
Huh? Yeah.
I can find a way to super
Yeah.
them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What did I do? I don't even know how this goes on. I never did. I'm getting grumpy at it.